Go. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamana Tira Konachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavijaka Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavijaka Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai All glory to the Assembly Devotees All glory to the Assembly Devotees All glory to the Assembly Devotees All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Nārāyaṇam namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Nārāyaṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nārāyaṇa Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of fortune, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By our regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service unto the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So, I know we're beginning in text 32. Can you check the board there? I think what verse I'm supposed to put? 32 and 33 probably. It says 29. 29 to 32. Okay, very good. All right, so I'll read 29 and 30 myself. Okay. All right. Okay. On this 28th day of August 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we'll be reading text 29 through 32. Okay, I'll read 29, 30, and 31 myself. Padani trini dattani bhumir mahyam tvayasura. Tvabhyam kranta mahi sarva chitiyam upakalpaya. O king of the demons, so this is Lord Vāmanadeva addressing Bali Maharaj. O king of the demons, you have promised to give me 3 steps of land, but I have occupied the entire universe with 2 steps. Now think about where I should put my 3rd. English. As far as the sun and moon shine with the stars, and as far as the clouds pour rain, all the land throughout the universe is in your possession. Of these possessions, with 1 step, I have occupied Burloka, and with my body I have occupied the entire sky in all directions. And in your presence, with my 2nd step, I have occupied the upper planetary system. Purport. According to the Vedic description of the planetary system, all the planets move from east to west. The sun, the moon, and 5 other planets, such as Mars and Jupiter, orbit one above another. Vāmanadeva, however, expanding his body and extending his steps, occupy the entire planetary system. Okay, now this is text 32. Repeat after me. Patishrutam adatus te niraye vasaishyate vishatvam nirayam tasmad guruna chanumoditaha patishrutam adatus te niraye vasaishyate vishatvam nirayam tasmad guruna chanumoditaha patishrutam adatus te nidye vasa ishyate vishatvam nidyam tasyamad guruna chanumoditaha patishrutam adatus te nidye vasa ishyate vishatvam nidyam tasmad guruna chanumoditaha patishrutam adatus te nidye vasa ishyate vishatvam nidyam tasmad guruna chanumoditaha patishrutam adatus te nidye vasa ishyate vishatvam nidyam tasmad guruna chanumoditaha. Anyone online? I guess not.
Pratishrutam adatuste.
Patishrutam adatuste.
Niraye vasa ishyate.
Nidye vasa ishyate.
Vishatvam nirayam tasmad.
Vishatvam niryam tasmad.
Gurunacha numoditaha.
Gurunacha numoditaha. Thank you, Vijay. Anyone else? Okay. Patishrutam. What had been promised? Adatuhu. Who could not give? Te, of you. Nidaye, in hell. Vasaha, residence. Ishyate, prescribed. Visha, now enter. Tvam, yourself. Nidayam, the hellish planet. Tasmat, therefore. Guruna, by your spiritual master. Cha, also. Anumoditaha, approved. So, Vāmanadeva is chastising Bali. Because you have been unable to give charity according to your promise, the rule is that you should go down to live in the hellish planets. Therefore, in accordance with the order of Shukracharya, your spiritual master, now go down and live there. Purport. It is said, Nārāyaṇa parasarve nakutascha bibhyati svargapavarga narakesh vapitulyarta darshinaha. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nārayaṇa, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. Bhagavatam 6, 17, 28. A devotee engaged in the service of Nārayaṇa is always in equilibrium. A devotee actually lives transcendentally. Although he may appear to have gone to hell or heaven, he does not live in either place. Rather, he always lives in Vaikuntha, Sagunan Samatitjaitan, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Excuse me. That's what this is for. Vāmanadeva asked Bali Maharaj to go to the hellish planets, apparently just to show the entire universe how tolerant Bali was. And Bali Maharaj did not hesitate to carry out the order. A devotee does not live alone. Of course, everyone lives with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because the devotee is engaged in his service, he actually does not live in any material condition. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Kita janma hao yata tuya das. Thus he prays to take birth as an insignificant insect in the association of devotees. Because devotees are engaged in the service of the Lord, anyone who lives with them also lives in Vaikuntha. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Udmitatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this is quite surprising, I think, in one sense. Bali Maharaj did give the charity. He offered the 3 steps of land. And Vāmanadeva, as we know, expanded himself in such a way that even with two steps, he covered everything. And he even penetrated the covering of the universe and let the Ganges water drops come in. So now he's berating Bali for not fulfilling his vow. You know, the whole thing with Shukracharya was that Shukracharya said, don't do it, go back on your promise. You can do that because this is Nārayaṇa, he's going to take everything. So Bali refused to do that. He rejected Shukracharya, and he offered the 3 steps of land. But now he can't fulfill his vow because there's no place else to step, at least apparently. So Vāmanadeva is chastising him for not fulfilling his vow. But you get the sense from all of this that even though Bali had everything taken away, he was still in a very positive frame of mind, because he had tried his best to fulfill his vow of giving the steps of land. And indeed, we'll see in the next chapter that the last step, he says, put on my head. But he's still sent down to a hellish planet. Sutala is a hellish planet, Ramapati. It's definitely a lower planet. But Vāmanadeva stays with him the whole time. I think it's a long, long time he's down there, because next thing we know, he's the Indra for the next Manvantara, but that's going to take a while. So this verse is very appropriate for the devotee. It doesn't matter where he is. Nārāyaṇa nakutashan svarga apavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshanam. Because the devotee lives in, did I say Om Jnana? I did say it, right? Okay. Forgive me. I'm getting to see now. So a devotee lives in the service to the Lord in any circumstance. And even we see on this planet, sometimes there are so many hellish conditions, difficult conditions, and yet the pure devotees who are engaged, they're ready to die in that service, knowing that they're really not going to die. They'll go back to Godhead. And so we saw the best example is Srila Prabhupada. He undertook, why? You remember that poem he wrote, famous poem, Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna consciousness in the West. Sorry. And there he says, "Why? I don't know why you brought me to this horrible place." He had taken a little walk in Boston, and came back and he saw what modern American city is, and it's that to even great extent in New York, where his final destination. I mean, at least for the first part of his trip. And even though he saw that it wasn't at all like where he came from, Radha Damodar, Vrindavan, and so forth. And yet he was praying to the Lord but you brought me for a reason now, so please make my speaking in such a way that people will receive it, be receptive to it. He was praying for success in the service, not that, please take me back, So that's the whole idea, is that for a devotee, he's always a pure devotee, always connected to Krishna. The difficulties are actually welcomed, because it's a chance to show a further level of surrender and to experience the Lord's protection. And that's why I was just listening this morning to some famous lecture of Prabhupada on Queen Kunti's prayers. And what prayer is he talking on? Vipadaksantu takshashva. Tatta tatta jagadgiro bhavatu darshanam yaksat apunar bhavadarshanam. So the famous prayer that Queen Kunti. Now, just contrast that before we give you the translation to this one. That famous verse you probably all know: Samashritaye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punyasho marare pavambude vatsapadam padam 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 yadmadam natesham. So this says that those who take full shelter of the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, samashrita, total shelter, padapallavaplavam, boat of the lotus feet, Mahatpadam, those lotus feet, which is the place where all the universe rests, Mahatattva, and also the Mahatmas. There's two meanings there. They're also at Punya Yasho Murari, the whole lotus feet of who? Krishna, Murari, whose glories, if you chant them, bring piety automatically. The Bhakti piety that takes you back to God. Punya Yasha Murari. Then what happens? Bhavambudir vatsapadam padam padam. Then the whole ocean of material life, you're in a boat after all, shrinks down to the water in, not even a cow's hoofprint, but a calf's hoofprint. So small they can easily cross beyond it, so you don't even need a boat anymore. So, Bhavambudir vatsapadam param padam, because you've gone to the supreme abode. And not for those devotees who have taken shelter of those lotus feet. Padam padam yad vibadam natesham. Here we have that word vibadam again. Not for them is this world where there's danger at every step. Oh, we want to get out of this world, it's so dangerous. Yeah, but the pure devotees, they don't care ultimately. They're ready to, all they want is to be engaged in the service of Krishna, in heaven, in hell, or wherever, the spiritual world. So that's Bali's position. And so Vāmanadeva is, it's just amazing this past time I was going back and forth, right? He's berating him for not fulfilling his promise, even though he tried the best to do it, and Vāmanadeva made it impossible because everything was covered in 2 steps. So he's saying that in text 30, all that as far as the sun and the moon shine with the stars, as far as the clouds pour rain, all the land throughout the universe is in your possession, or was in your possession. Now I've taken it over. But by 1 step only, I have occupied Burloka with my body, I occupied the entire sky. In your presence, with my 2nd step, I've occupied the upper planetary system. So there's nothing left. So logically speaking, he can't fulfill it. You can't give him 3 steps of land. There's no land left. It's all taken over. But he can do the most important thing, which is fully surrender and become Bali the Mahajan, who is the exemplar for Atma Atma-nivedanam, yes. So anyway, all of these different aspects are going on. And this verse is kind of very like key. The one that Prabhupada quotes, what is it? How is it? Nārāyaṇa paraksabe nakutasthana bibbiti swargapavarga narakeshu abitulyartha darshanam. Yes. So there's no fear. You see that? Bibbiti. The bibbiti means fear. They never fear any condition of life. So that brings us back to our famous verse Prabhupada would quote. He must have quoted 100 times in his lectures, you know, and in books. Bhayam. So where does fear arise? There's no fear in Vaikuntha. The very name Vaikuntha, of which Goloka Vrindavan is the highest Vaikuntha planet, means there's no anxiety, there's no fear, right? So how does fear arise? Well, it arises when a living entity who is in the spiritual world, which we all came from, according to Prabhupada, which we accept, for some reason, because he has minute independence, becomes curious about the dualities of this material world. So, dvitiya abhinaveshatak, instead of being absorbed in Krishna's lotus feet and in loving Krishna in all the pastimes, which 99.99% of the residents of Goloka Vrindavan are doing, you turn toward the material energy, the dvitiya, the dualities, and you become absorbed in that. Ishada petasya, you turn away from the Lord. Viparyo asmriti, and you forget all about your position in the spiritual world. And your position becomes opposite, reversed. Instead of staying as a devotee of God, you become his competitor, exactly opposite. And that causes great fear, because fearlessness comes from feeling the protection of Krishna, even in a so-called fearful, a dangerous condition. And this was the whole point that Kunti made. I'll take those vipada. You see, which one who's taken shelter of the lotus feet can give up, you know, this the dangers of this world. But he said, let me have the dangers, rather than be bereft of your association. The Mahabharata war is won. Yudhishthira is enthroned. You know, all of that is done. Krishna's job there is finished, and he's going back to Dwarka, and they're not going to see him again. So he says, forget that. I'd rather have all those dangers again and again. Because he recounts some of them, you know, back in the forest and the poison cake and all the things. Let's have those dangers, because during those dangers you would always appear and save us, and we got your association. So this is the mood of a devotee. Desirous, let's use a word Prabhupada loved to use, about the association of Krishna, that's all that matters. That's all that matters, that we can have Krishna. So whether it's a dangerous situation or a rasa dance or some lila, but if we have Krishna's association, that is our success. And you find that even in Goloka Vrindavan, the anxiety is there, transcendental anxiety, when Krishna goes out to herd the cows and we don't see him anymore. It's not that we're thinking that, you know, there's going to be some danger, but it's just that every moment seems like a million years. And we read about, there's a whole ashtaka, beautiful ashtaka, meditating on Krishna coming back from the forest. And how Mother Yashoda and the gopis, they go up to the top of the house so that they can see, you know, the first signs of that cloud of dust as all those cows are coming back. And they can maybe hear a little faint noise of the flute, you know, and they're so anxiety. And that's what's happening, this separation and meeting, which churns up the ocean of rasa. So Bali isn't going to have to go through that. He's going to have the association of Vāmanadeva for who knows many thousands of years as his doorman, you know, taking a very humble position. But this verse is key. Nārāyaṇa Paraksarve, that if one is back in that position of thinking of Krishna at every moment. I was doing this last night, because last night we studied in the Bhagavad Gita class 3 essential verses, beginning with Antakale chamameva smodan mukva kalevadam yak priyati samudbhavam yasti natrata samshaya. Good to know these. He's giving the general position there. the general understanding. Whatever, he says, first thing is, one who remembers me at the time of death, the antakale, the end time. Mameva smaran, so the thing is remembering. Muktva kalevidam, when he gives up the body. Yak priyati samadbhavam, he certainly comes to me, to my bhava, to my nature, to the spiritual world. There's no doubt about it. Yasti natrata sankhya. Then he gives the general principle. Yang bhapi smadang bhavam jajajante kalevadam. Tang tame vaiti kontaya sadatad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of mind you have, whatever the most prominent thought and your absorption, when you leave this body, that will determine your next body. You see? If you have no exposure to Krishna consciousness, you're sure to think of something material. Who knows? A lot of people cry for their mothers at the time of death. They're lucky, at least as a human being. But you may think of your beloved dog. You may think of all the video games you played. Whatever you may think. That's pretty scary. So that's the general. So therefore, the next verse begins with therefore. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusvara yujyacha mayapatam nomabi mame vaishesha sankhya. So he said, therefore, Arjun, at all times and all places, sarveshu kaleshu ma manus, remember me and fight. So you can fill in whatever duty you're performing. Remember me and do books. Remember me and wash the pots. Whatever. But the whole point is remembering Krishna. The Krishna consciousness, when properly executed, results in increasing and deepening remembrance of Krishna. Even to the point, as you're well aware, if you read Prabhupada's books, 24 hours. Chant Hare Krishna 24 hours a day. Even during your sleep. If we're at that level where at every one of our waking moments is full of Krishna consciousness, then we'll remember Krishna even when we sleep. And devotees have had some very interesting dreams when sleeping. So that deepening the remembrance, I dealt with this last night, but I'll do it here also, because what we're seeing is Bali being a descendant of Prahlad, who is the Acharya for remembrance, right? Yes, he's the Acharya for remembrance. You have, Swayambhu Naradakshambhu Homara Kapilo Minu Prahlado Janako Bhishma Bali Vayasaki Vayam. So there's a list also describing the 9 processes of devotional service and who is the exemplar for each one. So we have Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. Who is the Acharya for Shravanam? King Pariksit. He's hearing the Bhagavatam. And complementarily, chanting, it's Shukadev. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. Smaranam, it's Prahlad. Padasevanam, I think Lakshmi, right? Archanam is actually Prithu Maharaj. I was once asked by, I think, Lokanath Swami, how is Prithu Maharaj, the Acharya for Archanam? Because there's no apparent deity worship that he does in there. And I looked it up, and my conclusion was that all these sacrifices that he performed, to get the earth producing again, he was doing all these, that was his archan, and therefore he was archan. Archanam Vandanam, that prayers, is of course Akrura. Dasyam, Hanuman. And Sakyam, of course, Arjun. Sakyam, and then, is it parental? There's a parental in there too? I'm sorry? Atmaneva is next, so that's Bali. So Bali is the Acharya for that. So that means that exactly this, that he's given everything. He's completely surrendered, you see. And therefore, he's always thinking of Krishna. He's at that pure state. All of these devotees are always thinking of Krishna. So the deepening of the remembrance, you may recall, I once went through, I think, in the class at one point, the Krishna Katashtaka in the 12th canto. 8 verses about the glories of hearing and chanting. Very nice. You know the word it begins with? Sankirtan. Sankirtamano Bhagavanananta Shrutana Bhava Vasana Vipungsam Pavishya Chittam Vidunoti Shesham Hitata Moko Brahmavati Vata. So one was always hearing and chanting about Krishna. Krishna enters the heart. He's already there, but he manifests there, and he cleanses away everything inauspicious. You see? Just like the sun causing the darkness to dissipate, or if you're in a cave, you know, and there's fog in there, and the sun isn't reaching, a powerful wind, it acts like to blow out that fog. You know? Anyway, it goes on there glorifying. And then, interestingly enough, 3 verses that we should all be familiar with, because they appear right at the beginning of Bhagavatam, in the 5th chapter, where Narada Muni is inspiring Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam as his final work. You know, and Prabhupada took one of those verses. He thought it was so significant and inspiring that he put it in the preface to his Bhagavatam. This, you may recognize this verse. Tad Bhagavasargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pati Shlokam Abadha Vatyapi Namanyanantasya Shankitaniyak Shrinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sarava. Those words, which are meant to bring about a revolution in the misdirected civilization, these words should be familiar to us. Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pati, and even if every shloka, every sentence is miscomposed, you know, it's not a great literary work, but it deals with it deals with the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the unlimited Lord, Krishna. It is heard and sung and relished by the great sages, even though they may not be perfectly composed. On the other hand, and this verse comes first, what is it? Nayadvachas chitta padang hare yasho jagat pavitram pagunita kare tad dvangsha tirtam. This is how it's in the 12th canto. There's a little difference. Instead of tad vayasam tirtam, dvangsha tirtam. Tad dvangsha tirtam natu hangsa sevitam yat rachitas tattva hisadavo amala. Is that those words, a literary composition which may be very nicely composed, every verse nicely composed, but it doesn't deal at all with the subject matter of the holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna, is like, what's it likened to? A pilgrimage for crows. I see the crows sometimes. You know, they come and they're scavenging. Because while I'm walking, I come across the crossroads of Garnet and Cass. And there's 2 trashes, one on this side and one on that side. And they practically always have been explored by some of the homeless people, see if they can find a can in there or 2, which I think they can cash in for a nickel or something. I don't know what they get. But they all mess all over the place. And oftentimes there's a restaurant there, there's food on the ground, you know. So you see the birds, the seagulls, which is not a good sign. It means that they can't find enough fish out there. So they have to roam around and try to get this. But sometimes you see crows, you know, black. Anyway, we don't want to indulge in that. You know, millions of books of literature that have nothing to do with Krishna. And what do? They fill people's minds with all these thoughts and images and emotions that just keeps them bound up to this material world. So the remembrance increases, and by this hearing and chanting. And the last verse of this Ashtaka is all about the glories of avismriti. Avismriti Krishna Padara Vinaya. Krishna Padara Vinaya means the lotus feet of Krishna. And avismriti means not forgetting. Now, just a little editing note on this. I worked on this book, and we put there for avismriti remembrance of. You know, but it's more than remembrance. It's unbroken remembrance. Avismriti means never forgetting. You see? It's emphasizing that point. It's one thing, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, you remembering Krishna, but you can also forget Krishna. But if you have avismriti, you don't forget. So what's the benefit? Well, he describes avismriti Krishna Padara Vindayo Chinotya Badrani. The first thing is it destroys everything inauspicious in your life. You know? And Shanktanoti, and fills your life with auspicity. Sham is, you know, like Shankara, he who causes Sham, which is welfare and peace and everything. So, Shanktanoti means pours this good auspiciousness over you. Sattvasya Shuddhim, it purifies your being, it purifies yourself, your nature. Sattvasya Shuddhim Paramatma Bhaktim, and nourishes devotion to the Supreme Soul within your heart, Krishna. That's the same. It's from the. I'm not sure. I think it's in the 13th chapter of the 12th canto. Yeah. It's the final verse of the Ashtaka. He's describing, and this verse is mentioned in that biography of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There's a whole chapter on the verses he liked to quote. This is one of them. And so then what happens? Chantanoti sattva sishuddhim paramata bhaktim, that supreme bhakti to the Supreme Personality of God who is dwelling in your heart, the Supreme Soul, which is characterized by knowledge, jnana, vijnana, realized knowledge, experienced knowledge, and viraga, detachment from everything material. So this is what we're trying to achieve. That our active, when we're in a nice kirtan, we're absorbed in chanting the holy name, and we're feeling the bliss of, that Vrata Yatra. There's so much kirtan, wonderful. So that full remembrance is something we want to try to cultivate, so it's there 24 hours a day. And that's the whole purpose of bhakti. Smartavyak sadatam vishnu vismartavyo najatachit. Sarva vidinashedikshur etayor eva kinkara. Who can take the mics, which is sitting over there, and give Vijamani a mic and see, Vijamani, you know this verse, you can tell us roughly what it means, or even precisely. Can I say in Russian? You could, but it wouldn't help us. Why don't you say, try to say it in English?
Always remembering Krishna, that's the verdict, or always remembering Krishna, never forgetting Krishna. That's the sum and substance of all the vidhas and nishedas, all the rules and regulations.
Yeah, they're all the process of devotional service, the do's and the don'ts, are serving this. It literally says service. Vishnu smarta vinjat sarva vidi. All the vidis. Vidi means the do's and the don'ts. The vidis are the do's and the sheda are the don'ts. So the sarva vidi nisheda aksur etayor eva kinkara. Are servants of this principle, meant to increase our remembrance and decrease our forgetfulness. So it's very simple. But it's not so easy because we're so conditioned to forget Krishna. That's why we came here. So as soon as something attracts the senses, then Krishna can be forgotten. Or even remembrance, of something that we enjoyed. Or something that we feared. That's also a distraction. So Bali is giving us the example of, just imagine the tolerance. Here he rejected his guru, who more or less cursed him, said you're going to be bereft of all your material, possessions, and Bali didn't care. He said, "Well, this I already promised 3 steps of land. If it all goes, then I have to keep that promise." So he's right. So Shukracharya predicts you're going to lose everything, which he does. I mean, everything material, but he gains everything spiritual. So now, you can't expect, well, I forgot about this, how Vāmanadeva gets on his case now for not fulfilling the promise. He certainly tried. But Bali is not, losing his luster. But we had, this a few verses back. But really, that comes from being suddenly shocked and depressed, afraid, something like that. That's how you lose your luster. So that, what is it? Nashta Shriya, I think it was something like that. But Shriya can mean beauty, which is really what the luster is about. But it can also mean wealth, prosperity, you see, right? So, like the goddess of fortune is Shri, because anyway, so it's just emphasizing he lost his wealth, but he didn't lose his spirit. He didn't lose his positive attitude toward Vishnu. Whatever he wants to do, if he wants to send me down to hell, okay, I'm ready to go. And then, of course, the dramatic point comes in the beginning of the next chapter, that he says, yes, third step out here. And giving, everything. Still, he has to go down to hell. But don't worry, Narayan's going to be there as his doorman. So it has a happy ending. So that's some of the thoughts about these verses. Yeah, and Prabhupada quotes here, the last thing he quotes is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now, isn't it interesting? I was just thinking, because I like to sing this song, obviously, Yashomati Nandana, whenever I have kirtan. And then there's that last word, which is Bhakti Vinod, And what is it, Bhakti Vinod Ashraya, I think? Yeah. But it's not Bhakti Vinod. It's Bhakti Vinod. He misspelled it. He thought that was a mistake in the book. And instead of saying Bhakti Vinod, he wrote Bhakti Vinod. It is Bhakti Vinod. So don't we sing that every morning? Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Right? So there's this flexibility in the Bengali. You could add the A to fill out the meter, right? Yeah, that's what's happening. Hare Krishna, welcome. So anyway, it's the bucket we sing every morning is Bhakti. And for the sake of that bhakti, it becomes the most. I was just thinking. I got a note from Krishna Chaitra Swami, and he has this program now where devotees write their appreciations of a certain canto of the Bhagavatam, and then he edits it up, and stuff, and then he prints it somewhere. So he invited me to write something on the fourth canto. It doesn't have to be long; it can be very short, But there's a limit on length, I think. So I was just thinking of two prayers, two verses that especially inspired me when I first read them. One is, and I also might refer to the most famous prayer by Dhruva. Dhruva is in the fourth canto, right? And so is the Song of Shiva. And those are the two things I'm going to focus on if I write this. And so, what happens with Dhruva? It's so instructive for us. It's a transformation of his desire, right? It's a sublimation of his material desire. He was so upset, it was almost like a little child's thing. My stepmother insulted me. I couldn't get out of my father's lap, so he goes to his mother, and his real mother says, "What can I do?" She's Suniti, means virtuous one, and Suruchi, she was what we call hot, hot. So she says, your father loves her more than me, Therefore, what can I do? But she actually, I think it was Suruchi who also said something about finding God, getting the mercy of God. So yeah, she gave you good advice. So now you have to search out God. And Prabhupada adds this in, maybe from a commentary, so Dhruva asked Suniti, where is God? He said, I have heard that the sages go into the forest to find him. And that's how he said into the forest. So the whole point, everyone knows the story of Dhruva. He's determined. That's why he's Dhruva. That's his name. Maybe it's his nickname. Anyway, so even Nārāyaṇa couldn't dissuade him. So Nārāyaṇa gives him the instructions. But he still wants, his whole purpose is to get the kingdom. That's his motive of going there. But Nārāyaṇa gives him the process of bhakti. He's got him chanting the holy name, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? And performing all these austerities, So what happens is that, of course, eventually he starts just, he just was eating the fruit that fell on the ground, and he was just eating the leaves, and he wasn't eating at all. He's just breathing deeply, And he's entrained the universal breathing, and all the demigods are suffocating, so they go to Vishnu and say, please do something. And so he says, okay, so he goes down. He was meditating on Vishnu all this time in the heart and chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Vishnu appears before him, he opens his eyes, and the object of his meditation is before him, and he describes his ecstasy, like every one of his senses was, interacting with it. And then, of course, he chants prayers. But he doesn't chant the most famous one. The most famous one is in the other book, Prabhupada would always quote. Sthanabhilashi tapasistitoham pram taptavan vena munindra guyam kacham vachindvan abhidivyarattam swaman katastosmi varangnayache. I got one or two words wrong there. But he's saying that I was situated, desiring the kingdom. Sthana, in other words, the kingdom. Sthana abhilashi tapasi stitoham, situated in severe austerity. But now, tvam prabdavan, I've gotten you, your darshan. who are hidden away from the devas and the great munis. They can't see you. The darshan, direct darshan of Vishnu, God. So now I realize, Kacham Bachinvan, I was searching after broken glass in the form of this kingdom as great as Brahma's. But now I see the real perspective. But I have gotten this divine jewel of your darshan. Abhidivya Ratnam, Swaman Kratartosmi Padangnyashe. Now I don't want anything else. I'm satisfied, you see. So he had an evolution, or its sublimation of his desire from desiring this kingdom, as a Kshatriya, to forgetting about the kingdom and just desiring Vishnu. So that's the idea. But so then what do you want? Okay? In other words, that's not in the Bhagavatam. So in the Bhagavatam, there are also some prayers, and the one that I remember, I memorized, was so nice. The Bhakti Moho Bhavahatam Trahime Pasango Bhuyad Ananda Mahatam Amalashayanam Yenan Jasobadam Aruvasanam Bhavabdim Neshe Bhavad Gunakatam Ratapana Matta. So my dear Lord, this is what I desire. Bhakti Mohu Bhavahatam Trahime Pasango. I want to have the Sangha, and this word prasanga is used, as it is by Kapila Dev when he's preaching to his mother. Satam Prasangan. Not just sangam, prasangam, means meaningful, intense association where you're hearing and chanting, not just some acquaintance, So bhakti mahu prabhahatam. So he's describing the devotees who he wants to associate with, who are bhakti mahu prabhahatam, tvahime prasango, who are floating, who are swimming in the river of bhakti, of glorifying you. Bhakti Mahu Bhavadam Trayame Basang Bhuyad Ananda Mahatam Amalashayanam, who are pure at heart, Amalashayanam, pure of all material desires. Because by their association, Yena, by their association, I will easily, I will easily cross over this ocean of birth and death, which is full of blazing fire-like dangers. I'll never forget that phrase. Ulbunam. Anjasa ulbunam babamdim. How? Neshe bavad gunakatamata panamata. Because I'm mad now to hear your gunakatama, the nectar talks of your qualities and pastimes and so forth. And that's what I'll find in the association of devotees whose hearts are always filled with the river of hearing and chanting about you. So this prayer of Dhruva, this one I might write about, So it's the same. It's always this, a similar thing that's going on. Is the evolution or sublimation of material desires to spiritual desires. That's the whole process of devotional service. And when you have no material desires, you just want to serve Krishna, remember Krishna, anywhere, heaven, hell, or earth, and as long as I can be absorbed in that, then you're ready to go back to Godhead, because that's what's going on there. And we left there and became alienated from it, and we're trying to find happiness here, and we, millions of births. So this is the lesson here, and Bali also, he's the descendant of Prahlad, and what did Prahlad say? One of his most famous is Naivod Vijay, Padadodachayavaitaramnis, Tvadviyagayana Mahamatam Manglachita. I have no problems at all. You remember all the problems he had? That he seems to have. Oh my God, I mean, I didn't see the movie. They show him being thrown off the cliff, right? Boiling in oil, But it wasn't a problem. He was simply absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and he saved him, and even in the cauldron, it felt like he was taking a bath in Yamuna. And, thrown off the cliff, and he was just floating down, and whatever, he completely protected. So that's the heritage of Bali, and Bali is now showing that he is on the same level of Prahlad. He's pure. And he'll gladly live for I don't know how many thousands of years in Rasatala, especially he's got personal association of Vāmanadeva there as his doorman. Okay, so we've gone a little bit over. Any thoughts on these points? Okay. Dravida and then Ananda.
About this future, Vāmanadeva coming as a doorman in hell.
That's the next chapter.
What is the reason exactly why Vāmanadeva is coming to be like that, to serve his devotees as a doorman?
I don't recall reading that, why he picked that. It's almost, the whole thing is full of all of this surprise, and that someone who seems to be one thing turns out to be another. Starting with Vāmana himself, he looks like I'm not going to say Brahmin dwarf, a dwarf Brahmin. I don't know if you know this, but did you know what dwarf means in English? It means someone who's misshapenly small due to some chronic disease or something, you know. But dwarf in the Oxford English Dictionary, I think, no, in the dictionary, in regular dictionary, if it's used as an adjective, it simply means diminutive, which is exactly what Vāmana is. So he's not a Brahmin dwarf, but he's a dwarf Brahmin. He's a diminutive brahmachari. So, what was the question again? Why
Vāmanadeva comes to be a servant of Bali Maharaj in hell?
Well, the idea is that he's punishing him for for not giving the third step. But then he gave him the most important step, on my head. So he did fulfill the thing. So now he's saying, okay, I curse you to go down here, so I can't take that back, but I'll accompany you down here. I'll come down there with you. I think the whole thing is full of surprises. You know, I mean, you can imagine how surprised Bali was when suddenly this little diminutive dwarf Brahmin, I'll accompany you. So if Krishna is there with you in hell, it's not hell anymore. It's heaven, the spiritual world, wherever Krishna is. So anyway, that's the only thing I can think of, is that he's showing that he's not really mad at Bali for not giving him that third step, which he did give him ultimately, the most important step. So it's, there may be some more commentaries. I can look up, Vishwanath, and he says that there's probably a lot of thought about that. But right now I don't have it. Okay, so Ananda has some comment or question or an objection. Maybe a donation. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the class. You were mentioning Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam. Sometimes, people may also ask that, like Krishna says that if you, just a verse before, Krishna says that if you remember me alone, then you will reach my destination. But is it true for other religions also? Like if someone
is it true for
other religion people? Like if they are worshipping some person, for example, Christianity. If someone is remembering Christ at the last moment of their life, will they attain Christ? How does it work?
I'm not going to speculate on what that destination is. That's certainly more auspicious than remembering something completely mundane, obviously. But it's not that you're going to a place where Christ is always being crucified tomorrow. I mean, it's kind of I don't know. This whole pastime. Prabhupada stayed in. When he went to Mexico, there's a famous thing where he went there, and this, I knew Chitsukananda a little bit. He was an amazing devotee preacher, and he was at his height there, and he had gotten a really wonderful temple. I think they still have it. Beautiful building and everything. And they had Prabhupada. I don't know. He wasn't staying there at the time, but he was staying nearby in a nice apartment or hotel room, whatever it was, But there's, Catholic. So there's a big picture of the crucifixion there, of showing Christ crucified, in Prabhupada's bedroom. So he came out and he was saying, take this out. They killed their spiritual master. That's what he said. They killed the spiritual master. But even to have that as the most prominent image that people know of Christianity, Catholicism, Christianity. What does that mean? What are you really thinking there? I mean, we would never think that God could be crucified. His pain and all this stuff. And so I guess it's a reminder of the resurrection. You know, that's probably what. But for Prabhupada, it was just like, oh, the spiritual master is being killed and tormented here. He felt that. So what that means, you know, those who are Catholics and what that means, it probably means they'll come back again as a Catholic here, you know. I mean, there certainly is no spiritual world where, you know, the greatest worshiper of God is being tormented like that. So I don't want to conjecture beyond that, but it's not the same as remembering Krishna in Vrindavan, that's for sure. It's not going to take you to the same place. I'm sorry. Probably bring you back again to worship, you know, Jesus on the cross again on this planet. Yeah, I'm not going to conjecture, but it's anyway. We have our, you know, when you read about and you hear about the description of the spiritual world, it's something, because there have been a fair number of Catholic people who became devotees, you know, because they could never get a proper description of who is God. You know, what does he look like? You know, what is it? You know, it's always very vague. And understanding that, you know, that on the first day when you're in the Krishna temple, yes, we you know, this is what God looks like, and it makes so much sense. What would you do if you were God? You know, would you have ups and downs? You know, and wherever you're living. Well, this problem, I'll have to, you know, consult with my, you know, and see how to solve it. You know, no, everything would be completely blissful. It would be varieties of lila, which is exactly what it is. That famously, Prabhupada would say, Krishna doesn't have anything to do, meaning that he doesn't have to do anything. You see, the English language is crazy. You know, it's practically the same words. But if you have nothing to do, it reminds me of you know, a mother. A kid is sitting in the sand. You know, don't you have anything to do? You know. But he has nothing to do in running this world. Everything is by his energies and by his expansions. So what does he do? Does he just meditate all day? Or just sit there? No, he plays. Don't you want to play all day? Right? We forgot. It's so great. You know, he's working, right? He goes out, he's herding the cows. But what do they do out there? They just play. The cows eat the grass and they play. And of course on the earth some demon comes. That's another kind of play, you know, exciting. Oh, what to do, you know, you kill the demon. But in Goloka there's no demons. Well, there's all kinds of games that they play. It's described in the Krishna book, you know. And so, and then they come back. So he has a job, full-time job, very serious job of taking care of these cows, you know. But the job consists of playing all the time. That's his spiritual world. So that's not, you know, where is there anything like that in Catholicism, in Christianity? I don't know. That's why the Christians, I don't think you have people who finally said, I've had it with these Hare Krishnas. Well, we had one fellow who was here, I'm not going to name his name, who, during the pandemic, we had a lot of guys join. I don't know if you were around at the time. They joined, for some of them for a short time. And this fellow, he said, oh, Susukam Kartam Abhiyam. He had read that verse, you know, the 9th chapter, and he was always dancing. So this is great, he's doing nicely, young guy. But then I heard he had left. And I think I was traveling at the time or something. And he said, it's just a slave mentality, you know, maybe they gave him one too many times to wash the pots, I don't know, whatever it was. And then the funny thing is, months later, Balaram meets him on the street. I don't know if it was here or somewhere else, you know. Maybe it was right here. And he said, let's go for a walk. He was with some girl or woman. And they started preaching to him, you know, Catholicism and this and that, you know, like that. You know, it wasn't like something friendly. But he had, the problem was he couldn't read. I think he was from a foreign country. He never really learned to read English. And he had also dyslexia and this and that. And if you can't read, you know, Prabhupada's books, it's very difficult to get, you know, become enthused. So anyway, that was the fate. But there have also been, I'll give you this one, and we'll end here because it's getting late. There's one lady who's famous in certain circles, especially in the press, the ISKCON press and the BBT, Ragatmika. Ragatmika. She was a nun. This is, and she heard of Krishna consciousness, and she visited the temple, became attracted, and the 4 eggs was no big deal. That was like one of the things that attracted her was the 4 eggs, and she became a typist in the BBT, and she was so dedicated during the marathon. The marathon was a once in a lifetime thing. It was the 17 books in 2 months. Prabhupada said you have to complete this Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we only had 3 volumes printed, plus 2 volumes of the 5th canto. So I had the great opportunity, the good fortune to participate in that a little bit, not so much. But she was in the middle of it because so much of it was typing up Prabhupada's dictations of what he had done. And she would type late into the night, sometimes all night. And Prabhupada heard about it, and she became famous for that because she'd been a nun where you really get austere. So the austerity she welcomed. And later on she got married. And I would see her because she lived in Alatra, and I would visit there. And unfortunately, the first child was ill. He was in didn't leave the hospital basically. So she would go there and she would chant to him, and the nurses were all amazed. What's going on? And she would preach to them. That is so important that he could be hearing the name when he leaves. And all this stuff. And so I think she was there when he departed and he was chanting, and so she was able to preach to all these nurses. So. And there's so many others who, and really the usual problem is, as I said, that you're so, disciplined to worship God and be very, humble, and of course Jesus. But what does God look like? Who is He? And they can never give you any specifics. And so therefore, the sometimes very strict Catholics have become interested in the movement because you have this wonderful image of. And not only image, form, name, pastimes, and everything of God. And it makes sense. And they're used to discipline, so if they get into chanting and everything, they can become very good devotees. Otherwise, I don't know. If you think of Jesus on the cross, where are you going to go? I hate to think there's a place in God, in the spiritual world, where that's going on eternally. My God, Hare Krishna. All right, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol. All right. And tonight...